Welcome to The Other Side, Mississippi Today's political podcast. The Other Side lets you hear directly from the most connected players and observers across the spectrum of politics in Mississippi. From breaking news to political strategy to interviews with candidates and elected officials, we'll bring you facts, perspectives, and context that helps you cut through the noise and understand all sides of the story.
I'm Geoff, Pender, political reporter at Mississippi Today. I'm joined here today with my colleagues, Bobby Harrison.
Hey, Geoff.
And Taylor Vance.
Hey, y'all.
Good morning, guys. It's last week was a big week at the legislature, a big deadline week for floor votes. They were there arguing all day long for several days. And also one of the key issues that we've talked about a lot here continues to be Medicaid expansion and what the Senate might do.
Well, and that's still a good question.
Right, and that's still a good question. Bobby, give us a lay of the land as of late last week.
Yeah, well, you know, I don't know about you guys, but I would consider that particular week in the legislative session as the busiest week of the session each year, except for maybe the end of the session when you have that flurry activity. You just
I might have some other words for that week of the session, but busy is a good way to put it.
It was busy, but the Senate let its Medicaid expansion bill die on the calendars. And to say Medicaid expansion, that's using that term loosely. Actually, the bill didn't do anything other than bring forth all the code sections, the legal code sections. So later in the process, they could amend those code sections to presumably enact Medicaid expansion. Well, they, for whatever reason, and we can talk more about that, they just let it die. But that's not the end of the world. And for people who support Medicaid expansion, the House bill is in the Senate, and the Senate, probably maybe the best case scenario anyway. The Senate can work on the House bill and put its proposal in the House bill, send it back to the House, and presumably from that point we'll go to a conference and maybe negotiate a final outcome. If the Senate has the votes to do that, I think at this point that's the main question.
That's still a big question, right? Yeah. Taylor, what are you hearing on that?
You hear different things depending on which day it is. Senator Blackwell, who is the chairman of Senate Medicaid, said that he thinks that they do have the votes for some type of an expansion plan. We don't know what the expansion plan is.
He's referred to it as expansion light, right?
Yes. And, yesterday after he told the media in the Capitol that he was going to let that bill die, he told kind of the assembled media outside in the hallway that he was going to, do a strike all on the House amendment, and sometime, this week he would, introduce his own plan, but he would not really reveal what the plan was. All he would really say was that it would have a work requirement and that it would be more conservative than the House plan, but we don't really know what that means.
Just backing off a little bit back to 30,000 feet or whatever with Medicaid expansion, where Mississippi is one of the highest rates of uninsured people, some of the worst rates of anything health-wise you can name.
The one that stands out, it sort of trumps all of them. We have the lowest life expectancy in the nation.
And there's that. Yeah, obviously this is a big issue for Mississippi. But I guess there's some debate, Bobby, and I know you've been talking with folks about this of, okay, how much do we expand Medicaid? How much do we let the private insurance industry, maybe through the federal exchange, can we come up with something that'll help the poorest, yet still, keep private sector more involved? How might that work?
You're opening a big can of worms there, Geoff. It's such a complex issue, but, there's several components. This Medicaid expansion is part of what a lot of people call Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act. And Medicaid expansion is one component of the ACA. Another component is the marketplace, the private health insurance exchanges. And you have people, including Insurance Commissioner Mike Chaney, saying if you expand Medicaid, it's going to hurt those exchanges for the people. There's people on the exchange between 100% of the federal poverty level, which is about $15,000 a year, and up to the limits for Medicaid expansion, which is 138%, which is about $20,000 per year. There's people on the exchange who, if Medicaid is expanded, they will leave the private insurance market where they get a
subsidy.
They get insurance at a very low price on the surface, and we'll get more into that. And Cheney is saying it's better for those people to stay on the private health insurance exchange instead of going to Medicaid expansion. But the thing about those private health insurance policies is while you're in that income category, you can get a policy for next to nothing in terms of monthly premiums, but you can have really large out-of-pocket expenses.
Yeah,
really large. I'm talking about
huge
$5,000.
deductibles, right?
Yeah. And for somebody who's making $20,000 a year, that's just it's really not feasible. With Medicaid expansion, you don't have those issues, and for that reason, most people believe Medicaid expansion is a better option. Now, the people below 100, the people below 100% of the federal poverty level cannot qualify for those changes under the Affordable Care Act.
The gap. Those are people in the gap.
So there's some people who are arguing that we should expand Medicaid in the traditional sense for the people up to 100% of the federal poverty level, and then between 100 and 138, leave those people on the exchange. But apparently you could take the Medicaid money to help those people pay for their insurance. And there's some people who think that that's actually a workable solution, a way to kind of get around all this. The only issue is with, it's kind of Chairman Blackwell and Lieutenant Governor Hoseman has kind of put themselves in a hole by saying they're not going to take any Medicaid expansion that does not include a work requirement. And of course, we don't think the federal government's going to approve the work requirement. So that where does that leave us?
Yeah, and I think there's also been some studies from healthcare experts that have said that a work requirement is, it actually costs more money to implement a work requirement than it would to police it, monitor it, enforce it. Yeah. Than it would to just have expansion. And Bobby, sort of going back to what you were talking about earlier, if, say, Mississippi only expanded Medicaid to 100% of the federal poverty level, would we still get that 90% match from the federal government?
Okay, this is nuanced. But if you did, as I tried to describe better, I don't know how well I described, but you expanded Medicaid to 100% and then helped the people between 100 and 138% with their private insurance, then as I understand it, and the Hilltop people kind of backed this up saying, yes, they would, the state would get the good match, the 90% match. But if you do, as some people want to do, and just expand Medicaid to 100% and don't do anything for the people above 100%, but just leave them on the private insurance for them to fend for themselves, then no, you would just get the regular match, which would be 77%. And I'm a journalist, so I'm no mathematician, but I think you look at the studies, it would cost more for the state to do that than it would be to do Medicaid expansion.
Well, the state in that case would lose about $1 billion a year.
Right.
It would leave it on the table.
Commissioner Chaney says that cost would be anywhere between $60 and $100 million to do that sort of half expansion, let's call it. And you can, and Corey Miller, the state economist, he put out a study, and he, and others experts have backed this up, that a straight Medicaid expansion would not cost the state anything for several years. And then with the economic boost it would provide to the state, it may never cost the state anything.
Well, the House plan, if it goes, again, straight expansion, it calls for hospitals to cover any cost to the state as opposed to taxpayers on top of that, which hospitals have volunteered to do in the past for expansion.
So it'll be very interesting to see what happens next week. We know the governor continues to be opposed to it, and he is privately telling senators that he is going to veto an expansion plan if it reaches his desk. So it'll be interesting to see
Yeah,
how
and-
those dynamics play out, considering that I think he still has a lot of ties in the Senate. He's a former lieutenant governor, and still has some allies in that chamber.
Yeah, and we need to remember that. We probably didn't stress that as much as we should. As we talk about whether the Senate has the votes, the threshold is not a majority vote. I mean, the threshold is that 2/3 majority
right.
to be able to override the governor's veto. And I don't know about you guys, but for a brief moment after the House passed the bill, by the large margin it passed the bill, I thought, well, this is going to be easy. But as we know, that's not the case. The governor's working hard. He does not support Medicaid expansion. And, and just in general, I forget this sometimes too, but the Senate is a lot more conservative body than the House is.
Right.
Yeah.
At least that's what, do y'all agree with that?
I don't know if I'd fully agree with it. I mean, I think it depends on the issue. The legislature can just be a bizarre place sometimes, and I think it's just in the Senate. I mean, you've got fewer people, and that's the math is just, it is what it is over there, and it's tough.
Bicameral form of government, usually the upper chamber is designed to be more deliberative, I guess would be a kind way to put it. So things can be a little more difficult
I think
there.
Speaker Jason White and some of the House members would scoff at that
They probably
idea.
have different words than deliberative, don't they?
I think they have some choice words that are not different from a deliberative for them.
Yeah, that's going to be one to watch this week. Let's shift gears a little bit. It was a big week last week. Had another big issue that's been a big issue for several years now, and talk about being deliberative or whatever you want to call it. What happened? They're still attempting to reinstate our ballot initiative for voters.
Yes, and the Senate deliberated a lot on that yesterday, and it's a little complicated because you have sort of two avenues. You have
we're talking about that 2/3 vote again.
Again, that's right. That's right. There is a measure floating through the legislature that deals with amending the Constitution, and then there is another measure floating through the legislature that deals with changing statute. But the short version is there's still an avenue available to try and reinstate the ballot initiative. The House plan let me back up. Both the House and the Senate only want to reinstate an initiative that will allow voters to propose amendments to change laws, not the Constitution. Both plans I think both have the position that there should not be that petitioners should not be able to put initiatives on the ballot that deal with abortion. But other than that, that is, I think, about where that's about all that they can agree on. The Senate wants a much higher signature threshold. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I think the House is about 150,000.
Yeah.
Senate's about
to get something put on the ballot.
Put on the ballot.
And the Senate even wants to, I think the final version of what they were proposing would be to have once the issue hits the ballot, it has to get approval by 67% of the voters. 2/3 of the voters.
Yeah. I didn't think the number. I didn't think 2/3 would come up as much as it has today.
Yeah.
But it's a little bizarre. Senator David Parker from DeSoto County told me that he does not want that to be the final sort of voter approval threshold. He only wanted to raise that to sort of have a sort of starting negotiating position when he starts negotiating with the House, but he does want it to be higher than a simple majority. He wants it about 60%.
As it turned out last week, the Senate does not itself have a firm position to start from, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of nuances and moving parts on this, but the bottom line, to put the initiative back in place, you had to amend the Constitution. And to amend the Constitution, you had to start out by getting 2/3 votes of each chamber of the legislature. And as it stands now, again, the Senate does not have the 2/3 vote to do that.
No.
At least it appears they do not.
No.
Well, I mean, I think they do not have the votes based on some actions
they
that took part.
they passed a statutory, just straight statutory bill to create an initiative process in the code, and that only passed by 26 to 21. It was a very, very close vote, and they let their vehicle to put it in the Constitution die on the calendar. But there is still a House vehicle alive.
Yeah, remember, guys, the state Supreme Court struck down the initiative process back, Geoff, when was it? Was it 2020?
2021.
2021. And like the day after the initiative was struck down, you had legislators, leaders, former Speaker Philip Gunn stood out saying, well, we need to get this done. We need to get the initiative back before
we're going to restore this right for the voters.
Yeah, matter of fact, he wanted to call a special session to do it just then. And the lieutenant governor said, we don't need to do that. We can just do it. We can get back in session. It's not a heavy lift. Well, it's turned out it's a real heavy lift.
Real heavy lift.
Yes.
Oddly enough, lawmakers don't want to turn over power
Yes. There were some
to the electorate at large.
There was kind of some ironic debates yesterday in the Senate. You had had some senators saying that they wanted to make it a little difficult for voters to put something on the ballot and wanted that 60% threshold. But at least I thought it was a little ironic because I think some legislators would object if they had to get a 60% threshold to serve in the Capitol.
67% of the vote themselves.
Yeah, we Mississippi, we stand out in so many areas, and we can lay claim to the fact that we're the only state that with an initiative that has been overturned by the courts, and it's happened not once but twice in Mississippi.
Right.
Yes. And just think it's a little ironic and just very funny. I think there are 26 states that have some type of process for an initiative. Yet, I think if the Senate's plan goes forward, I think we would be an outlier because while I think some states have a higher threshold to amend the Constitution, I think we would be one of the few, if not the only state that had a higher voter approval threshold only to amend statute, general laws. So I don't know. And there was also, I think, Senator John Polk from Hattiesburg was saying he thought that an initiative process wouldn't make for good conservative policy. There'd be a lot of liberal policies that could pass, and I don't know.
There hadn't been any conservative policies. Right?
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe I've gotten my talking points from the conservative, wing of the party confused. But last time I checked, I thought eminent domain was pretty conservative.
Right.
I thought voter ID was pretty conservative, and even though it didn't pass, I thought the personhood was amendment that some people tried to push was conservative. I really can't think of too many liberal policies that have come from the initiative process. You have medical marijuana.
But then it got shot down and derailed. The process.
But I wouldn't say medical marijuana is really liberal. I mean, it's more of a libertarian issue really than anything. But I don't know. Maybe I don't know. I don't understand the talking points.
Yeah, the leaders on both really the House and Senate side, more so than the Senate side, they're saying they want to make this a difficult process so it won't be abused. But I mean, they seem to ignore the fact that the initiative process that was overturned by the courts had been in effect since 92, and in that time there had been three. Am I right about that? Three initiatives
or four,
that had made it through the process and was approved by the voters, and only 6 or 7 that even made the ballot over those 20 plus years.
It appeared pretty difficult.
It wasn't like it was a process that was being abused to begin with, but that's their talking point now. And Taylor, you were talking about how if what the Senate wanted to do became the became our initiative, what an outlier Mississippi would be in terms of how other states handle an initiative. And I think we'd be the only state that just said, okay, you can't deal with abortion through the initiative process. I don't think any other state has that in their
I think you're right.
Yeah.
Guys, again, it was a big week. Anything else noteworthy to mention when we wrap up here?
Well, I mean, we focus on initiative and Medicaid expansion. Those are big issues, but there's several big issues floating around this session. We'll try to stay on top of it. Taylor's been working on, you talk about the Senate being conservative, but the Senate did pass out of the chamber a proposal to allow early voting, early voting, which, some Mississippi politicians just think is pretty much close to socialism, even though we're only like three or four states that don't have early voting.
One of only three, I believe.
Yeah.
This would allow you to vote for 15 days prior to election day.
50, and it would be in person, so you would have to go to your, county circuit clerk, show a photo ID, just like you would with voting on election day, and they would give you a ballot, and you would fill it out, and it would be pretty simple. It's just kind of what's funny about this to me is I was talking to some people, and they were asking if they thought it would pass the Senate, and I said I hate to predict how votes would go, but because that can be you can get into dangerous territory. But I said, I think it would pass the Senate by a wide margin, and it did. And I think that if it were put on the House floor, it would probably pass as well. It's just the way the legislature works with committee chairmen, and just for the past several years, both in the House and the Senate, the previous elections chairmen just were against it and didn't want it, despite I think the majority of the members in both chambers I think supporting it. And a committee chairman can make a lot of difference, and Senate Elections Chairman Jeremy England has allowed it to get out of committee and bring it on to the floor.
Authored the bill himself.
Yes.
And he argues that it would make the election process actually more secure.
Sure.
It would sort of help alleviate the rush on election day. The ballot would go. You'd go in and vote at the circuit clerk's office. It would work just like it does now in terms of on election day. You'd take that ballot and nobody else would see it. It'd be inserted into some type of box, and it would just be counted with the other ballots on election day night. So, people who argue that it's not secure, I don't understand that argument. And I mean, we talk about the committee chairs. Lieutenant Governor Hoseman, y'all remember, used to be the Secretary of State, which is the lead state official on elections, and he formed while Secretary of State, he formed a commission way back to a large group of people to make recommendations, and one of the recommendations they made was to have early voting.
Right.
And I mean, the other thing that's sort of the worst kept secret that a lot of people don't want to admit is, I mean, you can manipulate our current absentee balloting laws to sort of have early voting a little bit. You just kind of have to lie about it. I mean, you kind of have to break the law, but you're not, I mean, nobody's really going to prosecute you for it.
Right.
It's because, right now you have to have an excuse to vote absentee. And one of the most, I think, widely cited excuses is that you're going to be out of town on election day. And what a lot of people do is they will go to their circuit clerk's office, say, I want to vote absentee. And they'll ask, well, what's your excuse? Oh, I'm going to be out of town on election day. And you have to sign an affidavit, or not really an affidavit. You have to sign saying that, that this is a legit reason. And there's no way of knowing if someone's going to be out of town on election day or not. And that's what a lot of people do. And if you were to get a lot of people off the record or inject truth serum in them, they would admit that too. And so that's why, I mean, it's really just kind of silly that, I mean, people can exploit that loophole in the system already.
Yeah, besides being silly, it's also inefficient. As the way the system works now, you go in and say, I'm going to be out of town. You fill out a ballot, and you put it in an envelope with your name on it. So there's going to be somebody who opens that envelope and sees how Taylor Vance, and Taylor, I'm using an example, but you were truthful when you were going to be out of town.
That's right.
But somebody's going to see how Taylor Vance voted under the system that passed the Senate last week. You take that ballot and just insert it into the ballot box, just like you would on election day, so people don't see how you voted. And so I think that's a big improvement in itself.
Yeah.
Well, again, a lot of big issues still floating around out there. We've still got a large chunk of the legislative session yet left.
Yeah. I think we'll now advance to the part where both chambers get mad at each other because it shifts to committees have to advance bills from the other chamber.
Right.
Well, I thought they were already mad at each other.
Well,
I was going to say maybe
I think it'll get even worse.
Even worse, yeah.
But,
I'm sure it will. Well, thanks for the update on everything, and onward and upward.
Yep.
All right.
Thanks,
guys.
y'all.
As we cover the biggest political stories in the state, you don't want to miss an episode of The Other Side. We'll bring you more reporting from every corner of the state, sharing the voices of Mississippians and how they are impacted by the news. So what do we need from you, the listener? We need your feedback and support. If you listen to the podcast on a player like iTunes or Stitcher, please subscribe to the show and leave us a review. We also have an email in which you can share your feedback. That address is podcast@MississippiToday.org. Y'all can also reach out to me or any of my colleagues through social media or email. And as always, thank you for your feedback and support. Subscribe to our weekly podcast on your favorite podcast app or stream episodes online at MississippiToday.org/theotherside. For the Mississippi Today team, I'm Adam Ganeshow. The Other Side is produced by Mississippi Today and engineered by Blue Sky Studios. We hope you'll join us for our next episode.